Welcome to Stranger Encounters. I am Tommy Salmons. This episode is going to be different, as you can already tell. I'm trying to upload it to my podcast host, Libsyn, from my phone. So we're going to see if that works. I'm recording this on a new app I downloaded today. I would like to be able to come to you with with an extra episode every week, even if it's going to be shorter, maybe something a little more philosophical. I don't know. I may save my topical um, stories for later in the week and do kind of a weekend review sometimes. Who knows? I just know I've been contemplating um, giving you a second episode, and I figured why not start giving it a shot now? So I know already that there's a lot of you with your panties in a bunch just from the title of the podcast episode. Just bear with me. Hear me out. I think there's at least good conversation to come out of this. So everyone's having a conversation with a communist or a socialist online, maybe in person, who knows. And we point out the horrors of communism or socialism, and they retort, "Oh yeah, what about all the people capitalism killed?" And I'm not the first person to ever point this out, but there is actually an argument to be made there, and they're not completely wrong, even though their motivation is wrong. They're not completely wrong. You try talking economics with them or giving them a basic breakdown of what you have in mind, because the cronyist, corporatist, pseudo-fascistic system we live under today isn't the way that you have in mind. It's not how you see it. And it's not what you would like to see implemented. And they can't wrap their head around that. Anytime you use the word capitalism, they come directly back to what we have today and the cronyist system that's in place, picking favorites, choking people out of the market, keeping competition down, all these things. And a lot of times we come away from those arguments and we're like, oh, what a stupid person. Why did I even waste my time talking to this guy? He's such an idiot. But maybe that's not the case. Maybe since the only thing that we can change is ourselves, and we can't reach through the computer screen and slap one of these motherfuckers as much as we like to, maybe the case is we need to find another way to be extremely precise with the use of our language in these conversations. I've been thinking a lot about how do you make the philosophy and the nuance of libertarianism digestible for the lowest common denominator of society. And all I can think of is we have to become more precise with our language, but not in a pedantic way. We have to mold the way that we use our language in such a way that they understand it. We're trying to deliver a message. If they don't understand the message, then we're just wasting our time. So I wanted to look at what is capitalism really? Now, if I'm not mistaken, it was either Marx or Engels who coined the term capitalism. One of them two. I'm not real sure which one, but it was one of them two. But I know that their general concept of capitalism was exploitation of the worker insofar as they're not working to sell products to people, to create products to sell to people. The owner of the capital is in charge of that, but the worker is instead working just to survive. You know, in some of these arguments and some of these aspects, it's hard to criticize that model. But I heard Per Byland on Free Man Beyond the Wall the other day, and he had said that he imagines if it wasn't for the corporatist type of capitalism that we have in place today, that we'd have something much more like a gig economy, like what you see online with Patreon and things of that nature. And the more I look at how Marx defined capitalism, the more I think this is nothing like what a libertarian has in mind when he says capitalism, and it's much more similar to what America actually is. So when we're discussing capitalism, we're discussing our ideal or idea of what capitalism should be, free market, laissez-faire. But what is it? And Marx saw what it was going to become. Like he was able to identify it. But it seems to me that what Marx missed and where it confuses many libertarians is the term private in the definition of capitalism as the private ownership of the means of production. Even fascist regimes claim private ownership over the means of production. Yet in fascism, it's a merging of the corporate conglomerate and the federal government together. I'd argue that a kind of neo-feudalist, pseudo-fascist style of government is what we have here in the United States. We have these cartels of hotels or this, pseudo monopoly propped up by the state in the taxi industry, or a cartel of trucking companies, all trying to keep smaller competition from growing and becoming part of the market. And they're using the writing regulation, giving it to Congress. Congress is voting it through, and they are using the strength of the federal government to keep competition out of the market. And that's what capitalism is in America today. I mean, that's the obvious results of capitalism. And that's not at all what any libertarian I know of has in mind. There's not one libertarian I know that would say that is their idea of capitalism. I just don't see any liberty coming from this type of system. Now, it almost seems libertarians have trouble with the negativity of capitalism as a term because they cling on to the idea that the majority of the world is going to adopt the term cronyism or corporatism as a descriptor in its place for what we have here in America. And if somehow as libertarians we can make that kind of like move within the world and within the minds all around the world and have that kind of impact where we actually change a term and we claim capitalism as our own, finally we'd have, legitimacy, just enshrining ideological legitimacy around the world, and we'd be a force to be reckoned with. But man, that's not happening, man. That's not going to happen. We lost the term liberal, and we're not getting it back. We lost the Democratic Party. We're not getting it back. We lost the left. We're not getting it back. Capitalism was never intended to be ours. It was never intended to be used in a free market way. Laissez-faire isn't even really ours anymore because they gave it to Ronald Reagan and said what he did was laissez-faire. So anytime you say laissez-faire, they think trickle-down economics. It's like peanut butter and jelly. The state co-opted the term capitalism. The state, the enemy of the libertarian, co-opted the term capitalism from Marx, an enemy of libertarians. It wasn't ours. It was never meant to be ours. It wasn't for us. The only thing that libertarians can do is, as Thaddeus Russell said, stand up and point out the flaws in this capitalist system. Stand up and say, look, man, the way the system is designed, the centralized power on top that is molding it and shaping it to fit their expectations does nothing but induces stress. It leads to addiction and it leads to depression. That's not the libertarian model. This isn't what we want. No, we don't want socialism. And no, we don't want communism. But we certainly don't want what's in place today. And there's not a really great term for what we want. But what we're into is, as I heard Pete and Per Byland talk about the other day, we're into a market economy. We're looking at a market economy. We're not into this cronyism. The government has no place within our wallets and within our system of our economic system. They don't do anything good for it. So we have to claim new words. I don't know if we want to use voluntarism. I don't know if we want to use Austrianism. I don't know if we want to use Misesianism. I don't know. What I do know is that the term capitalism isn't working in our favor. And we're going to have to look at history and figure out how many times did an epistemological argument ever get you anywhere. Now, I'm certainly not claiming superiority over the language of the libertarians. There's a lot of smart people. There's much smarter people than me in the libertarian world. And if they want to continue to use capitalism, I'm not going to say like they're idiots. Like that's what we have available in a lot of ways. What I'm saying is let's have a conversation about, and I think we can shape our argument to where we are doing a better job at engaging in a more precise manner. If we're engaging in these conversations, we're looking to inform and persuade in most cases. So the idea is that we do so in a precise manner, a manner that cannot be misconstrued or misused in a counterpoint against us. I can't tell you what I think the best term is, whether it's voluntarist. It's kind of an obscure term. It's not real well known. Like I said, I heard Pete and Per Byland discussing the history of anarchy, and market anarchist was a term used for many of the reasons previously stated. That the term anarcho-capitalist, it gets a lot of pushback. Anytime that you say that you're a capitalist of any sort, you get a lot of pushback. What I'm trying to do is find the most diffusing terminology, and not to necessarily persuade those that can't be persuaded, but to kill the typical arguments that are used on a regular basis before they even come up. In 1946, George Orwell was talking about things like this. He wrote a essay. It's about 10 pages. You can download the PDF for free online. It's called Politics and the English Language. And he was laying out his opponent's argument, because George Orwell was sitting there saying, no, like there's like words mean something, and there's a reason that words are used and mean the things that they mean. And the counterpoints coming at him was, a couple of the arguments he laid out that they were using against him was, well, our civilization is decadent and our language must inevitably share in the general collapse. Another one that he said that he heard was that it is common belief language is a natural growth and not an instrument we shape for our own purposes. So they were discussing the evolution of language and how it evolves. And we've heard this argument with the Constitution and this, that, and the other. And there's no doubt that today language is used different in many ways than it used to be. So the idea would be that we're able to adapt to the way that language is being used, because we have a goal of liberty. And if we're not speaking the exact same language, if we're not communicating well with each other and with others that we are trying to persuade into a more libertarian style society, then it doesn't matter what we say, right? But if our goal is to persuade, then we must be careful with the way we use words. And if capitalism is what we have today, then we have to draw a distinction that is easy to follow for the layman. And I'll repeat myself, but you can't just use terms like laissez-faire. That's Ronald Reagan. You use free market. Well, that's what they call us today. Remember George W. Bush? We have to abandon free market principles in order to protect free market principles, all that good shit. So I really think like subjects like this are worth like a full dissection. Um, I don't know if I'm necessarily the guy to give you that full dissection, but I think that I might be the guy to be able to start some conversation and engage in some conversation, and we can think about it. But we have to think about this question. Is capitalism compatible with libertarianism? I don't know. Hit me up. TommySalmons@gmail.com, on Twitter @TDSalmons, Facebook Tommy D Salmons Burger. Let's talk about these things. These are the typical libertarian things to get into, to argue about, the philosophies that we want to just hammer away at. So I hope y'all enjoyed that. If y'all really enjoyed this show, man, we'll keep doing it. We'll keep doing a second episode every week. I'm still working out on the kinks in uploading the podcast, so we'll get that figured out. But that was Stranger Encounters. I'm Tommy Salmons. Late.